September 28, 1946. Time body. In connection with the remark that the feeling of eternity enters into self-remembering, and does not enter into self-observation, we can remind ourselves of some of the ideas on time which are accessory to this teaching. There are 3 visible accessible dimensions and 3 invisible and ordinarily inaccessible dimensions. From this point of view, the real world is 6-dimensional. Owing to our limited senses, we know only a 3-dimensional world moving in time, and this we take as the real world, that is, as reality, as all that is or can be. We base our thoughts on this visible 3-dimensional world moving in time. That is, our way of thinking is molded on this reality, which is evident to our limited senses. It is, however, necessary to change our way of thinking if any development in the level of being or any increase of consciousness is the aim. This teaching, as it is so often emphasized, is to make us think in a new way. Let me here ask you, have you begun yet through contact with the ideas of this work to think in a new way? For this to become possible, the mind must be changed by new ideas, by means of which new, hitherto unused connections are opened. In this way, new and wide realities of the mind appear beyond the given narrow realities of the senses, with a corresponding increase of consciousness. Briefly put, one is aware of more than one was, and this in many unusual directions. Not only is the general range and grasp of the mind increased, but the awareness of oneself. For instance, to be told that one is asleep and mechanical and that one does not know oneself are new ideas. When applied practically, through self-observation, these ideas open up many new connections in the mind, in fact, so much so that the whole conception and feeling of oneself begins to alter, and a new self may become perceptible, hidden at some distance behind what we have up to now thought to be ourselves and the only possible form of ourselves. Let us take this point in connection with dimensions. The 4th dimension is that of time. We do not see time or ourselves in time. We do not see the time bodies of ourselves or of things. We think the past is dead. Our lives are living lines in living time. Owing to our relation to time, however, we see only a point in time and then another and so on, and we call them present moments. Notice well that our 5 senses only work in the present moment, only register the present moment, not the past or the future. To see this clearly is the starting point, in my opinion, of being able to understand something about dimensions beyond the senses. Do you realize clearly that you can only see or handle or taste an apple in the present moment? You cannot do so a moment ago or a moment hence, that is, in the past or in the future. So you are limited to this doubtful thing called the present moment, and all else we call past or future and regard as having no real existence. So we limit all possible existence to the present moment, and imagine God exists only in it. This is called in this teaching, however, a cross-section of time. Yet we are never in contact with this fleeting present moment, to which we confine all existence. It is actual, yet it is doubtful, not to the senses, but to consciousness. Our senses relate us to a present moment, but our consciousness does not. We are not conscious in this present moment of the senses. It is too small and too quick to be properly consciousing. Our consciousness, working above sense, is a mingled, confused thing, composed of past, present and anticipated future. By memory and by imagination, we tend to live behind or in front of the present moment, and cannot crowd ourselves into it. So we are never really in the external world as registered by the senses. They render things, as it were, like a succession of photographs made to follow in moving rapid succession, like a film. Yet, strange to say, each present moment is eternal. The present moment is both in time and in eternity. It is the meeting place of time and eternity. Eternity enters every present moment in moving time, at right angles to it. That is why, sometimes, in a state of self-remembering, that is, in the 3rd state of consciousness, we feel eternity. That is also why some things in the past stand straight out of time, often trivial things. This is because at any moment, into any quiet, unremarkable, ordinary moment, the dimension of eternity enters and we may happen to become conscious of it. The relation of time to eternity is first represented by this diagram. The horizontal line represents time, the 4th dimension. The vertical lines represent the 5th dimension, entering every moment. Every man is both in time and in eternity. Eternity is vertical to time, and this is the direction of self-remembering, the feeling of oneself now. Every now is eternal. To remember oneself, the feeling of now must enter a here. Now I myself, now I distinct from past or future. The newness of myself I now. And if the act is successful, you will know for yourself that eternity is all within now and can be experienced as a different taste from time. Notice that I do not speak any longer of the present moment registered by the senses, but of now, of this internal experience that self-remembering can actually give. Real I is in eternity, not in time. Self-remembering is out of time and personality. It is not surprising that self-remembering can give a feeling utterly different from that given by our relation to hurrying, anxious time. Essence, being eternal, has not the feelings of personality, which are of time only. To think from time gives no real feeling of oneself, or rather it gives a wrong feeling, our usual feeling of ourselves. This is our usual sense of ourselves. We can notice how incomplete it is. Why do people act as they do? Because they do not feel themselves rightly. We know already that the work teaches that we were created as an experiment as self-developing organisms, and therefore we can understand why we feel incomplete and why a man, molded only by life, that is, having only his acquired personality active, must always feel incomplete, unfinished, and so internally helpless. It is not the force of life which lies in time that can make personality passive. How could it, when it is the force that made it? Only another force coming from a different direction can make personality passive and feed essence, the eternal part of us. One can then begin to see that all esoteric teaching must have the quality of eternity about it, and being so can develop essence, which is eternal. Through all time, through all the ages, esoteric teaching remains the same. It always says the same things. It always teaches the same things. It is about time and change. It is eternity in time, and so it speaks always of eternal life. To return, the fourth dimension of time contains all one's life. We part of time at right angles. Or, more simply, time and eternity can be represented as the cross. Experience it moment by moment. It runs very fast and is only halted by the feeling of now. Our life, lying extended in its dimension, inaccessible to our senses, is all there in this invisible dimension. For this reason, everything we do now affects the past as well as the future of our life. One act of non-identifying now influences your past as well as your future. Your relation to people in the past will change by work on yourself now. Not only will you change your own past, but possibly theirs. This is very difficult to grasp, so I come back to the beginning of this paper where it was said that to change our being and to increase consciousness we need new ideas beyond those given by the senses. It was said in so many words that, as long as our thinking is based only on the evidence of the senses, the mind cannot think differently and new connections cannot be opened. You will say that the past is dead, over, finished just because your senses do not register it. If they did, you would think differently, but as they do not, you will say that the idea of the past life actually existing is nonsense. That is what it is. It is nonsense, for the external senses do not register it, since they can only register the moment of time called the present. The higher dimensions are not realities of the external senses, but of the internal senses. For instance, my whole life can be internally seen in a certain state of consciousness. Why? Because it is there. Where? In time. And my future. It is also there, in the dimension that we experience as time through which we are moving. Then I am predestined. Yes and no, because there are many parallel lines of time like telegraph wires, and one can be on one or another according to one's inner state. If you enjoy your negative emotions, you will follow one line, and the lowest. To rise in a vertical movement, one rises and follows another parallel line by non-identifying and by self-remembering, in short, by the work, which enters time at right angles and so is always vertically above you, whatever line you follow, and never in the future, for the future is in horizontal time. One might speak of one's vertical future, however, as distinct from one's horizontal future. If being develops, the direction is vertical. One will see one's life differently. Higher being is above lower being. At this moment you can go with I below you or above you. You can spoil something silently in yourself or not. You can say something to yourself or not. It will all remain in the time body, but on different levels, according to its quality. All the life is there in the time body. But by work now, things can be changed in the past and the time body connected in a different way, as one might loop up bits of a long, flexible string and lengthen others. When we feel that all the past is there and living in the dimension of living time, our sense of ourselves alters. Indeed, it alters very much, by our realizing first that passing time cancels nothing, and secondly that one can change things in the past now not by useless retrograde, but by active work on ourselves. We are not connected with a dead past, but with a living past. Every act of work vibrates through the whole time body and alters things in it. I can act now on my past. I can change now my behavior 30 years ago. Later on, we will speak of recurrence, of re-entering our lives once more and finding perhaps that some things have been changed, so that we begin to awaken earlier.